Hello, everybody. See, I told you
You weren't kidding. I love it. Keep it going.
I get
Keep it going.
loud.
Keep it going.
This is Peter Grosso, Pocket Pete, here with the great Charles Weinraub, a.k.a. the handsome homebuyer, a.k.a. Captain Permit, a.k.a.
El judío maravilloso.
There we
Why
go.
is he surprised every time
Every
he
single
gets
time.
pointed to?
It doesn't matter. Every single time. Yo, we missed that. We haven't done that since pre-COVID.
There's a lot of AKAs.
There are a lot of AKAs, but you only have one AKA moment, so you should know.
I gotta tell you, man, if real estate doesn't work out, you can, radio announcer, sports announcer, phone sex operator,
Can I
something.
Can I tell you my dream job?
What's your dream job?
Family Feud. I want to host Family Feud.
There you go.
That's the only thing I would leave real estate for.
You could.
Would be.
I feel like you were like, can you sing at all? Like opera type of shit?
Not opera, but I do a mean Frank Sinatra.
I feel like you could,
Yeah.
you could be a tenor, like a mean tenor. Good for you.
Oh yeah, thanks.
I'm envious.
Are you?
I mean, there's a couple things. I have a lot, so I'm grateful for everything I have. The two things I don't have are hair, which you can
Hello.
identify
Nice
with.
to see you.
And I kind of have this nasally thing going on. Like I don't project. My voice doesn't project in quite the masculine way that yours does.
Well, thank you. I have the manly voice.
So there are definitely millions of Midwestern women who would be like, just talk to me, whisper in my ear. Like they don't want to hear me. Bro.
All right, so I have a second career.
Okay.
All right, that's good to know.
9-100 numbers.
9-100. So, Charles, what I want to know, what's important to me is I want to know your journey. Let's start. Where were you born?
Okay.
Where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn,
Okay.
Canarsie, Brooklyn.
Okay.
Moved out when I was 3 years old, but I like to say that's where I got my, my street cred from.
Okay.
So I can consider myself a Brooklyn-born boy. Moved out to Wantua when I was 3 years old and been there forever. So for all intents and purposes, I was raised on Long Island.
You're Wantua fella.
A Wantua guy.
Okay.
Raised on Long Island.
Okay. What were your parents like? Describe your mom to me.
My mom is a saint. My mom is an absolute saint. She is this little 4'10", 100% Sicilian, but she converted right before I was born, so she's Jewish.
Okay.
So it's like double the guilt, double the food, double the hand moving. And she was just the most unbelievably supportive, loving person ever. I couldn't ask for a better mother. She was unbelievable.
Was that your dad's demand? Or was it your mom's willingness to just say, would you like me to convert?
Oh, so no. My parents got married my parents have been together. They're 68 years old. They've been together since they're 17. They've been married since they're 21. And they got married at 21. Everything was, my father didn't even bring it up. Right before, when she was pregnant with me, she decided on her own that she wanted to convert because she wanted her children to have one religion. So my father didn't even say a word. He didn't even care.
And did she go all in? Like, is she...
She's definitely the most religious person in my family. But now it's got to the point where, we've all been bar and bat mitzvahed, my sisters and I, and she used to volunteer at the temple and all that, but now she's out. But she's definitely the most religious of all of us, for sure.
That's interesting.
For sure.
If you flip, I guess you throw yourself all into it, right?
Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
Was there any... did you hear of any, conflict in her family to switch from Catholicism to Judaism? They're actually pretty close in attitude, I think.
Italians and Jews are the same people.
Yeah.
So Brooklyn was all Italians and Jews at that point. So no, they didn't. So my parents, that side of the family is really Sicilian, like Sicilian, what you see in the movie Sicilian. And they didn't really care because they weren't very religious, because my mother had a brother named Charles. That's who I'm named after. And at 17 years old, he died of bone cancer. So my grandparents at that point kind of just said, screw the church, we're not into religion anymore, because they were thinking, how can there be a God if they could let something like this happen to a child?
Right.
And at that point, they just didn't care about religion in general. And that's probably the only reason why there wasn't conflict there.
Okay. Tell me about your dad.
My dad, have you ever dealt with my dad? Have you ever spoke to my dad?
I've had a handshake with your dad. That's our level. Yeah.
I like to think that I got the best of both my parents. My father is totally opposite of my mother. So my mother is a very warm, outgoing, social person. My dad is a little socially awkward. He's a tough, Brooklyn, half Russian, half Polish guy. He has absolutely no filter. I walk into the office because he works with me now, which is very cool. He's worked with me for a number of years, and I've worked with him before that, so it's very cool. And he's got Rush Limbaugh blasting on the computer, and he's just like, like kind of just this grumpy guy. But deep down inside, he has a heart of gold. He's a very, very smart guy, and he gave me a lot of opportunity. In certain respects, like, so I don't know if you've dealt with this. I see a lot of people dealing with this now. There's as we get older, we get into our 30s and 40s, there's kind of like a passing of the torch with your parents, in the sense that you go from thinking they're always your hero, but you go from thinking they're like supernatural and knowing everything to understanding that they're not perfect, and that's okay. And their reality isn't your reality, and their views and opinions of you based on their experience of what they want you to be like and act and do isn't necessarily what's good for you. So there's always seems to be, especially when you're in business, because my father loaned me money to go into my first business, which was Mako. So he was like indirectly my partner, even though he was never there. So ultimately, I ended up selling that business because him and I clashed, and I knew that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And that's actually kind of the moment where I grew up, right around 30. It was a very pivotal moment in my life.
So that clash led you to part ways with your dad as a partner? So, and that's why you went to a totally different industry, because you just needed to split from like that industry and that the tension you had with your dad. Is that?
It's not so much tension. So my dad my dad's an ironic guy because he's a very negative yet very supporting guy all at the same time. So I would be like, I was like 22, and I'm like, I want to open this business and that business, as I already owned the business, and he's like, no. And I always thought he knew everything. And then there was a time, right about the time I was 30, where he got me into a little bit of business trouble. It wasn't necessarily his fault, but I was unaware of it, and then I had to clean it up. And at that moment, I realized, I'm like, my father's not perfect. He did the best he could, and he did a great job, but he's not perfect. And now that kind of gave me, I was always very confident. My mother kind of beat that into me from birth. But at that point, I became super confident to say, just because he doesn't like it doesn't mean that it's not going to work.
Right.
And I wanted to rebrand Mako. So I owned a Mako body shop franchise, like, better get Mako on TV. And I wanted to brand it, and build my own bigger and better. I felt I could do it better. But with him there, even though he wasn't involved in the day-to-day, he wasn't going to let me, there was going to be too much friction there. So at that point, I realized, I'm like, you know what? This isn't going to work. It's better to sever ties, and he's my father, love him, no issues, and go off and do my own thing that I felt had bigger and better opportunity.
Did you feel like, and it sounds like that relationship had him above you, and that like decision making was like you went to dad, and if he didn't feel like it was right, it didn't feel right to you. And then now that are you his boss? Like, does it feel strange to have that a decade later, have the roles feel somewhat reversed? How is that relationship now? Like in those moments where you're like, Dad, can you do this? Does it feel weird?
I mean, there's a little bit of having family in a business, because I have two family members in business. It's a little bit delicate because they're your family, right? So you need them to get stuff done, but sometimes not that they'll take advantage, because there's good and bad with it. Sometimes my dad will be tough to deal with, but I know that no one's going to watch my back like him.
Right.
And, he's almost 70 years old. He breaks his ass for me every day. Like, he has more energy than 25-year-olds. But sometimes I have to remember, like, when I'm going 300 miles an hour, I'm working 18 hours a day, which probably isn't normal or healthy. And my dad's not necessarily giving me all of that. I'm like, he's 70 years old. But he'll outperform 95% of 25-year-olds. But it's just, it's a little bit of delicate. But he's the kind of guy that gets it. If we have an issue, he will kind of like hash it out. But for the most part, we don't really have issues. And if I feel like I'm starting to have an issue with him, I just take care of it a different way and don't make a big deal out of it, because he's my father at the end of the day.
Did you leave Mako and start from scratch? Like, you left Mako, sold it, and then started investing in real estate immediately? Or like, what was that transition like? Were you doing nothing and trying to figure out real estate?
No. So I am a very transitional person. So I don't just, you'll see these gurus that are like, quit your job, screw it, just go out there and do it. It might work for some people. That's not how it works for me. So I opened Mako when I was 23. When I was 27, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I started training with Carl, my mentor, at probably like 28. I trained with him for about 4 years before I ever did my first deal. Then I did my first deal. I did 2 deals that first year while I had the Mako. I immediately put it up for sale, sold it, and then I said to myself, all right, I did 2 flips. The profit from those 2 flips can easily carry me through the next year as I'm figuring this out, but I already had momentum, and I had proof of concept, and I had a team, so I was off and running.
Those 4 years, that was 4 years of watching Carl do his thing and seeing multiple flips happen? Is that...
No.
Like, what did that 4 years look like where you're training and learning? Like, how many sit-downs did you have? How many times did you meet with potential sellers? Like, how many times were you in the thick of it during that 4 years to, like, then finally get your own thing? Were you trying for 4 years and finally happened? Or did you train for like 3 years and spend a year trying to get that first deal?
So I trained with him for 3 to 4 years, and then it took me, once I was ready, it took me a year to actually get the first deal. So it was intense, and it was 7 days a week. So my girlfriend and I at the time, I would have sessions with Carl once a week. And you don't watch Carl flip. That's not really how it works. It's a real educational process, but he's there as a guide and a coach. He's not spoon feeding you information. So there are some times during this where I'm like, Carl, like I'm thinking about giving up a business and a livelihood. Like, I need to know if this is going to work. And he's like, what do you want me to tell you? You want me to tell you that I know people that have become millionaires in real estate? Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. He's also a very like structured, type of like pragmatic kind of guy. So he was, and just everything. He was, he's an engineer by trade. So he's like a very organized, straight-laced person, and I'm like ADD all over the goddamn place, super energy. He's like telling me to write business plans. I'm like, write business plans. Barely got out of high school.
Right.
But I trained extensively with him. Every week we would go over stuff, and he'd send you this big binder, and I would read through the stuff, and he had kind of action items that I had to do. And a big part about real estate is trying to figure out what you want to do. When I first met him, I'm like, I'm going to be a value-add apartment building investor all over the country. And ended up being a fix and flip guy right out of the gate once I, kind of fell into what I like to do. But I would go out every single weekend to go to open houses all day long with my girlfriend and I, Saturday, Sunday, meet agents, meet contractors, build teams, learn, go out into different houses with contractors and say, how much does it cost to do this? Like, we worked really hard for a long time.
And you were just networking, and
networking,
building that
studying.
that database.
Networking, studying, just training every aspect of real estate. That's why today there's not really much about the single family market and now the development market that I don't know about, at least on a high level.
So you get that first deal, are you terrified? Like that first time you cut that check, you go under contract, you're gonna buy a flip. What does that feel like? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, I'm all about the ride, bro. Like for me, I say this all the time. I think I'm going to put this on a shirt. I'm more afraid of being average than I am of being broke.
Yeah.
Because when I look back on this stuff, failure was never an option for me. I never felt like, I'm going to fail. I was just, again, my mom just beat that into me. I've always had this kind of delusional way that I've seen the world of anything that I want to accomplish, I can accomplish if I work for it. But it was proof of concept. I don't remember cutting the check. I remember being excited the entire time. I remember, so interesting story with that. I didn't have any money. So a stockbroker friend of my father's introduced me to this chiropractor who's done real estate deals and all this, and he had money. So I sit down with him. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And he's like, kid, this is never going to happen. You're nuts. Like, this is post-crash, and we still haven't come out of it yet. He's like, this is never going to work. And then I was upset, but I kept going. And then I found the deal and I brought it to him because, again, I didn't have any money. And I'm like, I'm going to buy it for X. I'm going to sell it. I'm going to renovate it for Y. And I'm going to sell it for Z. And there was exact numbers. And he's like, kid, it's not going to work. Like, you're overpaying for the house. You paid 10 grand over ask, which is nuts. And it was listed on the MLS. Nobody pays 10 grand over ask in this market. Your reno is too light. And you're not going to get that for that kind of house in that location. So it was a Cape in Massapequa on a street called Linden Boulevard. And behind it is Carmen's Road. So Carmen's Road is a little bit busy road. So I remember I bought it for X. I literally came in on budget, and I was sitting there having brunch with my buddy, and my girlfriend, who was the realtor, called me, and she's like, we just got $415 for Linwood. And that was like proof of concept, bro, and that was it. And after that, there was no stopping me.
So that happens, you put Mako up? Like
Yes.
That was the moment you said, I'm in, I'm doing it?
Yeah, that's it. I'm like, proof of concept. I put Mako up for sale. I got another house off Craigslist that year that I did. I put Mako up for sale. We closed Mako the following year, and that was it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So like that's where the entrepreneurial spirit like really kicks in. Like you're willing to do 18-hour days, you're willing to do whatever you want, and it feels like it's paying off, right? Like that's one of the things that like I feel like you either have or you don't. Is like it was 4 years. And it was 4 years of that.
Yeah.
And not necessarily knowing if it was ever going to happen or if it was ever going to work, right? Or you just knew.
Well, I inevitably, being a 40-year-old man now and trying to be as self-aware as possible, that I got from my father 150%. So my father was, a Brooklyn guy, didn't graduate college, has been in business for himself his entire life. And regardless of, some times were good, times were bad, I was never left wanting anything as a child. I played travel hockey. I grew up on the water in Wanto. I had a great freaking life because of him and my mother. And but every day, he got up and went to work 6 days a week. Didn't matter what it took. Didn't matter how many hours. That's what I saw every day. It's like that was my hardwiring.
Yeah, and I think that's more important than anything. And one of the lessons I learned early on, especially when I became an iron worker, was that if you work harder than anyone else, you show up early and you're just constantly in it, you'll be better than 80% of the field without any skills.
Yep.
And then the rest of it is just learning the skills, and then you can become top of your field.
Yeah.
It's effort and energy. And for me, it's always been about whether or not I think about dying. I think about like being 80 and going and wondering, did I give it enough?
Yeah.
So like that's why when the alarm goes off, I hop out of bed. When I'll get up at 4 and start working and do whatever. I'll work till midnight because I'm terrified that I'd rather it not work out and know I gave it everything.
Of course.
Than it actually working and I accidentally fell into it. Like I want to know that I fought as much as I can fight. Otherwise, I won't know. But
inevitably, that if you work hard enough, it's going to work out. Like there will be like micro failures along the way.
Maybe.
But the macro is success and the life that you're proud of.
Yeah, and it's fun.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Bro, this is the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like I always tell people, I'm like, I'm wearing like $30 worth of clothes. Like I don't do this for the money, for this, for that. Like I do this for the ride.
Right.
The ride is awesome.
Yeah.
Like every day we get up and we love it. Most people get up every day and they hate their life.
I know. And I don't know if today's going to be a good day or a bad day, if I'm going to get bad news, if I'm going to be turned from going in this direction to having to run over to this place and solve this problem, or if I'm going to have 20 problems today.
Yeah.
And I wake up going, what's the problem? Let's figure it out. I love it. I love the challenge. I love even like in the moments of failure, I think, okay, this sucks. I see this sucks with a smile.
Yeah.
Because now I have something to dig out of. And I think that's the heart of an entrepreneur, is that you kind of need the ride, you need the fight.
Yeah. You want to play the game.
You want to play the game.
You want to play the game.
It's a fun game.
It's a game. And the cool thing about it is like you can always hit the reset button. Like it never ends.
Right.
I was always thinking, I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to go to NYU, and then I'm going to do commercial development. Then I'm going to private equity fund. Then it's going to be done. And I ran into an old buddy on the train who lives in Curacao. And it's weird. He'll come in from Curacao, and we're not friends like I'll call him to hang out. But for some reason, inevitably, once every 4 years, he'll be in New York, and I'll run into him like on a train or something. And he'll always drop some like crazy shit on me. So he was asking me, what's the end game? And I told him, and he looked at me. He says, "Does it really ever end? Do you think it's going to end then? Do you think it ever ends?" And then I realized, I'm like, it never ends.
Yeah, infinite game.
It goes on forever. It never stops. I'm never going to be content.
Right.
Which is not scary, but like sometimes concerning for me.
No, but I feel I've had that thought myself, but that's if you're looking for the end, then you're thinking about the end. Like what?
Yeah.
A beach, a margarita, who cares? It's really like if you love the journey, that's the greatest gift in the world.
I'm with you, but my reference to that is like I have an addictive personality. I don't drink, I don't do any of that stuff because I know, I think booze doesn't taste good, but I know that if I went down that route or anything I do, I'm going to do 180%.
Right.
So when I'm in this, like I'm in this 180%. Some people might say, you work too much. Even I think sometimes I'm like, do I work too much? I'm not good at like balancing relationships per se. I'm a very singular minded type of person. I'm 40 years old. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I feel like I'm 25 years old and going, but Carl has taught me a lot of lessons, and they all kind of get stored in the back of my elongated skull here, and periodically they'll pop up. And one of them is, and I've heard this from every really successful person I know. I was mentored by another gentleman. He just became a friend. His name was Les Jansen. Did you ever know Les?
No, I don't know Les.
Les has been gone for about 3 or 4 years now, but he was like the yin to Carl's yang. He was a guy that, flipped, but he was like a used car dealer. He was like a by the seat of your pants in the street kind of guy, whereas Carl was like very structured, educated, etc. Les wasn't. And everybody says to me without fail, like, yo, at the end of it all, don't work so much, because you don't want to wake up and be 50 and say you didn't spend enough time with your parents. You don't want to wake up at 80 and say I should have had kids, or I should have had more kids, or I should have taken that vacation. And that kind of haunts me a little bit.
I could see that. So I can feel everything but the vacation. I don't get vacations because I love my life and I love like the action, but I could see that. I could see like getting the well-roundedness of like people. But we're in a people business.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, do you have a girlfriend now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
But there's a difference between, like, they're talking about, marriage, children, and family. And a lot of people that, I'm going for the gusto. Like, I'm going to do like 200 houses a year. I'm building out the craziest thing I possibly can. And I'd ask Carl, because at the beginning I said, Carl, how many, who have you trained has done a lot of houses? He goes, I've had guys do 200 to 300 houses a year, which at that point now I have that in my mind. So I'm like, oh, anything's possible.
Right.
And then later on I said to him, like once I was doing like 60, 80, 90 houses a year, I'm like, whatever happened to those guys? He's like, oh, they all burned out. They all either were womanizers or drugs or gamblers, and they all imploded. He's like, flipping at that level is a burnout job. It is not a sustainable lifestyle.
Right.
And that's what I'm in the middle of right now.
You feel like the burnout's coming on?
No. My motor is like, bro, I could go forever.
Okay.
But I'm very conscious of all of it. I'm very conscious of that. I'm trying to be conscious of time. I also try to be very conscious of greed, because greed ultimately kills everything. That's why I try very hard to like share knowledge, share deals, share money, because the moment you just want to take it all is the moment it all blows up.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And for me, like, again, like it's about the process. I have some nice things, but I never had a thought about like once you get a certain level where you're like, you're paying your bills, your kids aren't starving. I don't even like, I don't think about it. I think about the game. I think about like building something, helping people, helping other people. Like, I don't think that I deserve the level that I've gotten to because I didn't get through college. Like I'm just a regular fella that put a lot of effort into something, and I took this step, this step, and this step, and I feel like if I could do it, anyone could do it. So I have a duty to kind of teach that and help people get to the next level, and that's the game I'm in. That's really what I'm enjoying.
I feel like you're more fortunate to have that upbringing, though. You
Yeah.
know, when I look back on people that are like very, very, very intelligent, killed themselves in school and high school, most of them are not like ultra successful. They took that same kind of track of where you grew up, whether it's like, teacher, doctor, lawyer, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things, right? There's nothing wrong with anything. But I grew up in Wantagh, which was a school of excellence, quote unquote. But for all that, you don't see anybody doing anything truly great.
Persistence.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that you have to have, I think, to be great, is to have thick skin. Take it. You got to take 500 losses to get that big win.
100%. So my point is with you is, you're looking at all those things as a negative and saying, I don't deserve to be here. I think all those things obviously lay the foundation for you being where you are.
Yeah, perhaps.
So, it's interesting.
But it's been a wild journey either way for both of us. I mean, you haven't been in it that long for the trajectory that you're in has been incredible. Have there been, because I know I've had it for my own personal journey, like moments where like you start to scale, like you did the 2 deals, then what? Did you go like doing 3 or 4 at a time? Like, What's the stress level when you're finally carrying 6 flips at once for the first time?
The first year I did is, I've been doing this for 5.5 years. So the first year I did 11, sort of got married and almost got divorced.
Okay.
And then the second year I did 40 and actually did get divorced. Then I did 67, 89. Then it started to get crazy. For me, I always need that next level of like challenge and rush. Mm-hmm. So I like pushing it to the next level. Like I get bored.
Yeah.
For me, flipping was always a means to an end. It's not something that I want to do forever. I love it. It's great. I like the action, but my personality is such, and I think it's really important that everybody understands who they are. My personality is such when I feel like I get to the point of like mastering something to my satisfaction, I get bored and have to do something else.
Yeah. It's the Mario Brothers rule, is what I call it, by the way.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So like you're in first grade. It's 1985. You got Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
And you're in level 1. You go. You're doing it, and you hit the mushroom and you die.
Yeah.
Then you go back. You start again, and then you finally get to the end. You beat 1-1. You're on 1-2.
Yeah.
Right. You get to level 2. Level 1 is a piece of cake, right? It's boring.
Yeah.
Now we just jump to the warp zone. We go to level 8. That's the only place where we have any type of challenge. So it's boring. It's boring to live the life of level 1. But at one point, level 1 was a battle. And so it's the Mario Brothers rule. You have to continue to give yourself difficulty, or at some point you're just going to quit.
Yeah.
We need that. People like us need that.
Yeah, it's all a matter of how you're wired. Like so how old are you?
I'm 40.
Okay, so I'm 40 also. We're in the same boat. A lot of our contemporaries who I've been with over the last 5 years are now 35, 40, 45 years old, and they're talking about slowing down or maintaining. Mm-hmm. And because of that, like I'm hanging out with like 25-year-olds because I want to be on the cutting edge. I want to be as close to the energy source as possible.
Right.
Because these guys and girls are like, they're just getting started. So it all depends on how you're wired and what you're into.
What I think you've done so well, and what I try to do, and I'm doing it at some capacity, but you've really impressed me, is that you've the biggest thing and the biggest problems I see with agents and people growing their business is they put it all on them, mm-hmm. and then they wear all the hats forever until they break.
Yeah.
How long did it take you, and did you hit any friction in your own like letting go period where you said, handle these phone calls or do this, where like you can scale yourself, where now you flip houses, you buy rentals, you have a permit business where you're constantly, you can't do it all yourself. You have to learn how to delegate. And the transition from the guy who was doing everything for himself to a guy that has people doing things for him in a way that keeps your brand and keeps the way you want it to run as if you were doing everything. How do you get there? For the people watching, how do they let go? Yeah. There's a lot of people who want to let go, and some of you know who I'm talking to.
It's not
teach
easy.
Us how to let go.
It's not really that easy, but I guess you get to the point where, and listen, maybe I feel like I want to have less control than I do right now. Mm-hmm. But you get to the point where you realize if you want to scale, ultimately, you cannot do it yourself. Investing is a team sport. You will be a miserable, crazy person who will burn out if you don't. You have no choice. It's also how big do you want to get? Like if you want to do everything yourself or have one other person helping you, you're only going to make so much money. You're only going to get so big. You're only going to have a certain amount of time for yourself. If you want to take it to the next level, you don't really have any choice. So there isn't a secret per se. You just have to realize, you know what? It's never going to be, well, I shouldn't say never. Sometimes you're hiring people who are better at what they're doing than you would ever be. Like Mike from Captain Permit is a super organized, regimented dude.
Yes, he is.
I am not a super organized, regimented dude. He runs that thing better than I do. So I think the key is to understand the type of personality that fits what you're looking to hire. Create a work environment that's pleasant, that people want to be in. Be encouraging. And most of this stuff is very simple. It's not really about like money and all that. It's about experience. Experience is something that I take through my entire business. From my employees to my investors, I create, to my social media presence, I try to create experiences for people as if we're in like the hospitality business, because that's what people really want. That's more important than money. That's more important than anything.
Absolutely. So that, I mean, and was there a moment though, like how do you know, or how did you know when you needed your first hire? Because what I found, and even I found for myself, I hit 110% capacity. I'm like, oh, I need to now I need to go back to 70% to take a minute.
Yeah.
I lost some business.
Yep.
Because I needed to pull back, teach somebody so that I can go at 200%. And that's been a struggle. It was a struggle for me early on because I grew really fast. And I just see it as a constant struggle for the agents that I'm helping.
No, without a doubt. And there's a couple of, like, I guess, issues with that. There's no, like, hard and fast rule. You'll feel it. But in general, I think it's better to hire too soon than to hire too late. The problem with most people is they live a lifestyle that is beyond what they should be living. So they don't have the money to invest in their business because they're buying stuff that they don't need.
Right.
That's the problem. Like, I've lived and continue to live a very, very modest lifestyle in which I'm playing the long game. So everything goes back into the business for the most part, which enables me to scale.
Yeah, you got every mile out of that sweatshirt.
Actually, this was a gift. This is the first time I wore it, and I think my girlfriend paid extra for the holes. But yeah, no, perfect point. Like, when I was in the body shop business, I owned a body shop. We painted 30, 40 cars a week. I made $700 a week. I paid myself $700 a week.
Right.
But in 5 years, I bought the building. I still own the building. So, I lived with my parents until I was like 28 years old. And then I bought a little, right before the crash, I wish I hadn't bought this, but it didn't put me in a bad place. Luckily, I bought an inexpensive condo co-op in Long Beach. I didn't go out and buy a house. I don't own a house today. So, that's my own thing, and that's extreme. But I've lived I've driven around a $260 a month car. I just got a Mini Cooper. It's $500, and I'm like twitching because I've never had a $500 a month car payment. So I'm not saying be like me, but I'm saying don't go out there and spend a ton of money because you're going to need it.
Right. Absolutely. So tell me about your journey when it comes to marketing. Are you a natural? Because when I first met you, you pulled up in a wrapped little thing with your cartoon on it and going, what do you mean you don't know who I am? I'm Handsome Homebuyer. You haven't heard me on the radio? What's wrong with you? Was that something you learned, or is that your personality? Have you always been a self-brander?
I think it's more my personality. Well, I've always been a very outgoing type of person. That's me. That's my mother. I was very, very fortunate because my father owned a Mako as well. That's how this whole idea came. And he had a partner who was a classically trained salesman. By that, I mean he sold Electrolux vacuum cleaners door to door in the 70s and was trained through Zig Ziglar, Tommy Hopkins, and people like that. That is a lost art that basically doesn't exist anymore. I was fortunate enough to learn the art of sales from him. So I was always a salesman. And the funny thing is, at the beginning, I was like, I don't want to be a salesman. It has a negative connotation. But really what a salesman is just an extremely effective communicator.
Absolutely.
A good, honest salesman. You believe in your product. You want to effectively communicate the benefits of that product. And by that, you're helping people get what they need and want. And as a result, you're making money and getting what you want. It's mutually beneficial. So I was always a salesman. And then through my training with Carl, he's like, this is what people are doing. This is what you have to do. And then I've always kind of been a little bit ahead of the curve. Not super early adopter. I'm not going to say I'm a super early adopter, but I've been a little bit ahead of the curve. Like Matt and I started working together like a year and a half ago before it was rare locally that somebody had somebody like Matt working with them. So things like that. You have to be, if you're not evolving all the time and constantly looking to do like the next thing, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah. Are you enjoying it? You enjoy those being the star of the show? Because you do it well.
Thank you.
I have to say.
I do. It's a very rewarding thing. I like it. I like being in front of the camera. It's something that I enjoy doing. It definitely brings a lot of business. It's a great byproduct of people knowing me all the time. I get a lot of business as a result of it. The brand itself gets, with Captain Permit. Now we're launching a property management company. It all development arm. It all kind of builds the brand, which is great. And it's very cool to help people. I feel we have a responsibility to, as we're coming up the mountain, to look back and, give that hand and pull somebody up with you.
Right.
And that's why I put all these informative instructional videos out. And, people in the industry will get mad and they'll say like, why are you doing this? Da 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 da. But what they don't realize is like, you know, your competition, they're going to take all your business. It's actually the opposite. And when I get some 17-year-old kid, like I went to a party, Eric Braun had Brewery 3, and I went to this party, and it was, everybody had been shut down from COVID for months. And he's 25, so his group of people is like, you know, 20 to 30. Not the typical group of agents that we're used to being with that are like 30 to 45 or 50. And they're all social media based. And when I walked into that place, you would think I was a rock star. But the coolest part of it is I got a kid standing there, he's like, yo, I work for I want to let you know, I just got my license as an agent. I worked for Amazon, bagging groceries. I listened to every podcast you ever did, and now I'm a realtor, and I'm going to buy my first rental property in the next 3 years.
Awesome.
Bro.
Yeah.
What do you like? What's better than that?
There's nothing better than that. And I can tell you some of the best moments I've had in my life have been people that have reached out to me and said, I watched a video where you said something, and this was happening to me at the time, and it changed my perspective, and it helped my life.
Yeah.
And that you know, I'm a man, I'm tough, but that gives you a little, you know, that little feeling that you suppress when you act like a man. But those messages are really touching, and you don't even know when they're happening, because like sometimes they'll say 6 months ago this thing happened. So like you don't even know who you're touching or who you're helping, but it's happening. And I don't know how many people have felt that way that didn't reach out. Yeah. So it's commendable what you're doing. Teach me how to do it. If I'm brand new to the world and I want to brand myself, and I don't think it matters what business.
No, it's all the same,
right?
It's all the same.
So how would you teach someone to create their own brand?
So at the root of everything, you have to get over your fear of being in the public eye. That is like number one. And that is literally what handicaps 99.9% of people is. First they say, I don't want to be on camera. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I sound. I'm like, listen, I call myself the handsome home buyer. Even my girlfriend at the time, who was almost my wife, was like, bro, you can't call yourself that. Like, so just put that in perspective. I don't have a voice like yours. I'm running around just like, yeah, like people don't. So the moment you stop caring about what other people think is the moment that you're free. So that is super important. And then from that point on, just think about, then the second thing people will say to me is, I don't have anything to say or anything that people would want to hear. And my point to them is, you're a realtor? Yeah. How many houses you sold? Sold 3. Great. First time home buyer? Yeah. So you sold 3 houses, which means the person that the real estate agent hasn't sold any, or the home buyer that hasn't bought a house, you know 3 times as much as them. If you put out information that you feel you would want to hear about and learn about that gives value, don't just like spam people to put crap out. If you put stuff like that out, inevitably you will build a massive brand. And you just have to be conscious of it. Like, it takes a little bit of time at the beginning, but as you're going throughout your day, stuff that pops up that you think is interesting, pull your phone out, make a quick 30-second video on it. Hey, blah, 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 blah. Like today, I'm ticked off. And usually, I'm not political. I don't get political. This could be considered political, but not so much. The eviction moratorium has been pushed back to January. Mm-hmm. Okay, I get it. But that's it, man. I don't want to hear it anymore. So I get up, I get on the phone, and 15 seconds. I was like, what gives society the push to go out and work when you're giving them free money and you're saying they don't have to pay their rent? When I have people coming out of houses that I bought saying, Cuomo told me I don't have to pay until January, there's a freaking problem here. Mm-hmm. That's a relevant point that people can, that can stimulate conversation, they can talk about, you can debate about, things like that.
Yeah, and I think even those agents that feel like they don't have something to offer, and I don't even want to just say agents, anybody who's trying to build a brand or build a business,
yes,
what you have to offer is your journey.
Yes. You
could just say, I'm brand new and I'm scared.
100%.
Follow me.
100%.
Follow me while I learn this and make mistakes. And if you bury yourself like that,
yep.
I almost wish I could do, I'm jealous that people are starting. I can go back to day one and go, follow me, I'm scared. Yep. And that's where you can you'll get so many people that care for you and want to help you and want to push you. By bearing your soul like that. I think that's the best advice I would give to somebody is just like open yourself up.
That's the thing. I had a conversation with somebody, a friend of mine who was formerly big into drugs and like homeless and all that. And he told it to me. He told me this, and I'm like, "Oh, bro, you gotta tell everybody." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "You gotta tell everybody." I'm like, "This is super important." and he never would. But my argument to him was, it's like, you think that this is going to have all these people look at you negatively. You don't realize how bad other people's shit is until you hear it. You think your shit's bad? Once you hear theirs, you're like, you know what? I'll keep my shit. You keep your shit. Right. But what it does is, so I had probably one of the things that propelled me even more so was the first year I did the 11, I had a very, very bad breakup, like sort of a divorce, had a wedding, but didn't sign the marriage license. Long story. But the point is, I was so destroyed by that situation. And I'm a talker, so I would talk to everybody about it. And through that process of me sharing how vulnerable and how horrible I felt and all the heartache caused these bonds to happen with people that inevitably just rose my business super fast, on top of the fact that I had all this raw emotion that I needed to pour into something, which was my work. So those two things together, it's very interesting when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, how people respond to you.
Yeah, I completely agree. That I think is like, and you if you allow it to the world, you're allowing it to yourself too. So now you can really like look at yourself and go, what am I doing wrong here? How can I guide myself? A lot of people are so scared about, like, they bother themselves up about how they're being looked at, like you say.
Yeah.
But if they reverse and go, let me show you, then they get to watch themselves too and kind of like navigate their own journey.
Yeah, 100%. Nobody's gonna kick a person while they're admitting, their faults, their flaws, their emotions. It's just people inevitably are good. They're not like that. It's when you go the other way and you try to, project this false persona. That's when.
Right. That's the move too. If someone's going to yell at you, go, wait a minute, I got this. This is how terrible I am, and then they can't do it to you.
Yeah. What can they say? It's like what was that movie? 8 Mile. When Eminem is like,
right.
let me tell you all. Let me tell you all. Tell me something you don't know about me.
Right.
It's the same principle.
Yeah.
But in general, with creating a brand, just you have to also understand the mediums in which things are being delivered. We're not in a, like, older agents will call me and they'll say, I'm not really busy. I'm like, what do you mean you're not really busy? I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, well, I just bought ads in the Penny Saver and I'm on the bus stop on Broadway. I'm like, that's because that's not the way it works anymore.
Right.
You have to make videos and create content and do all this stuff. And they're like, I can't do that. I don't want to be in videos. So you have to be willing to change.
Right.
And it's a very pivotal time right now. Like, we're about to hit, I think, that fulcrum point where this thing really takes off as far as social media, videos. Like, you can see it. Like, you can see it the last, like, 3 years, podcasts, etc. Like, it's about to really, really take off. And if you're not in that space, you're screwed.
Yeah. Or 3 years ago, I was saying, in order to increase your business, you need to be on social media. Now I'm saying, in order to keep your business, you need to be on social media.
100%.
And if we go 2 more years and you're not in it and you're just catching up, it's going to be scary.
And for as many people that are in it, the percentages are like, there's not a lot of people that are. So for as many people as that have a podcast or are doing vlogs or are shooting content on a weekly basis, that percentage is so small. Like, how many investors do you know that are putting out a lot of content?
You.
Yeah, not really many.
You and maybe 1 or 2 other people that I can think of are really putting it out there.
And how many agents and brokers? Like, I've been yelling to brokers for the last 3 years. You're the only broker that I know on Long Island that is doing something like this. None. And I've been, like, hitting everybody, like, you got to do it. This is the next iteration. It's got to be education and it's got to be the ability to market. That's what agents want. I'm like, I talk to them every day.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to provide the tools or the agent needs to provide themselves the tools. And it's probably, at this point, it's a survival thing. You need to do it, know it, or someone's going to eat your lunch. And that's why I'm throwing myself all in on it.
You have to. I mean, I don't think there's any other choice. The hard part is getting people to go back to what we were saying before is, I don't know what you can do to make people realize that just do it. Just make videos.
Right.
Forget about what people think. So I ask you because I'm curious to know, obviously you have a lot of agents. Mm-hmm. You're building out an awesome platform for them. How do you help them overcome their fear of being on camera?
It's been difficult, and what I actually the next step of things that I'm doing is I paid a videographer to make videos for like bio videos,
Okay.
for them to like where they don't have to do it themselves.
Okay.
And so like the first one, they get the first one, and now they see it. It's not so bad. They sit down, they have an interview, and they create content for them. It's made for them. Just interview. They're just answering questions. They get cut up, and then they can post it and see how positive it is, and then hopefully that nudges them to do it. I have to nudge them. I try shoving them. It doesn't work. So I have to. So we're trying the nudge, but ultimately, like, you know, if I can help 5 of 50 or 10 of 50 or you know whatever, you know, and then they're, you know, it affects their life, then that's a win. It's hard. It's hard to get somebody to believe in themselves enough to put themselves in front of the camera when they have so much to offer. We have so many great agents that have so much in them that people need to hear, and I would love to scale their knowledge and their empathy and the great things that they do, and they're holding themselves back, and you know, and it's heartbreaking sometimes.
And from an outside looking in, and I don't know anything about your business or your agents, your structure, but as a person following you on social media from the beginning, a perfect internal example from my point of view is Nicole Schwartz-Diaz.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even really know her. I think I've met her once. You know, she joined on with you, and then she just exploded.
Yeah.
You know, you turned her on to or encouraged her to make videos. You can see the evolution of that. And now, is she managing one of your locations?
She's a partner in Smithtown and Melville.
I mean, that's great. In a very short period of time.
Yeah. In a year. She went from doing maybe like 25 deals herself. You know, that was her pace, and then this year I think she's going to sell over 50 houses. And what made her, you know, explode, obviously her work ethic is there. It's, you know, she works as, I don't let anyone say that they work harder than I do, but I'll say, like, I'll put her at 98% of my work level. And she embraced what needed to be done. So like she was already doing some social media, but like when she came, she goes, what can we do? She started doing this thing called Side Hustle Sunday, where you're connecting with local businesses. So you're saying, this person makes wreaths. And so like she'll every Sunday she made a video where she was connecting with that person and exposing them and saying, this is someone who has a side hustle. And so like now all her people are rooting for them and buying wreaths, but all the wreath people are now getting to know Nicole Schwartz-Diaz.
Yes.
So she's doing this triangle of trust thing, and like every week, you know, and we were brainstorming because I love passionate people that want to like keep going. So she would call me and go, I got this idea. There's nothing excites me more than having someone call me and go, I have this idea.
Yeah.
So she's like, and then we would just like go back and forth over it, and we ended building. She built this incredible business, but also like she ended up becoming a partner in a year,
which is insane
because, you know, she embraced where the world is, and she had that work ethic. So like that can be anybody.
I mean,
and it's a great lesson.
Being successful in business comes down to this point, in my opinion. If you go out there and you selflessly give to other people, wanting nothing in return, you will get so much goodwill out of it and so much business, you won't even know what to do with it. She's out there promoting the wreath maker.
Right.
The wreath maker has 4 friends that need their house sold.
Right.
It's really that simple. So all you have to do is be a good person. Don't be a shithead. People that you see that have seen a certain level of success and are downtrending or never get to a certain point, they always kind of like hit their head. It's because a lot of times they're shitty people.
Yeah.
They're just shitty people.
Yeah. I believe, and this is how I've run my personal sales business, and is I never asked someone to give me business. I always said, how can I help you? Meaning like Charles Weinraub owns we own like 7 companies, but like, you know, you own Captain Permit.
Yeah.
And like we meet and I'll go, you look like a great guy. How can I help you?
Yes.
You seem like you do a great service. How do I connect you with my clients so that they feel what I feel?
Yeah.
Right.
And you've done that.
Yeah.
This is like real talk.
This is, yeah.
And you've done that. And as a result, we have this great bond.
Right.
And you can again, nothing. We all need each other. We're super interconnected.
Right.
Because we have this great bond, I know that I can rely on you to call you if I need a piece of advice or a referral or a contact for something, and you can call me at any time and say, how much does it cost to build this, or I have a question about that, whatever it is. If we don't have that because we're trying to keep it all close to the vest, it hurts both of us.
Yeah.
You don't get where you need to go. I don't get where I need to go because we were too busy. We didn't want to share.
Right.
We were afraid.
Yeah. So I spent my whole business trying to help other people, and it came back tenfold.
Of course, in a very short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So lesson. It's the Nicole Schwartz-Diaz effect. If you're open and you're willing to work hard, you can go from here to partner in a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well done.
Mic drop. Right?
Yeah. I think we're done.
Like there's nothing else to say after that.
You have anything else that we should cover? I think
I'm good, man.
This was amazing.
Yes.
I have such a good time when I'm hanging with you.
I appreciate it, man.
All
I
right.
appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Very cool.
All right, check out Charles Weinraub, handsome home buyer, Captain Permit. Find him on Facebook. Find him on Instagram. Matt, what else is he?
LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. Oh,
Yeah,
what's my
everywhere.
name? Oh,
What's
my
the
alternate ego?
Yeah, AKA.
El judío maravilloso.
Exactly.
What does that mean?
The marvelous Jew.
The marvelous Jew.
But it sounds so much better when he says
Right,
it.
in Spanish.
Yes, everything sounds better in Spanish.
All right, thanks everybody. See you soon.